I never thought a simple morning could change my entire life. The kettle had just started to whistle when the pain struck. Sharp, merciless, like a hand squeezing my chest from the inside. The world spun, and the next thing I remember was the cold tile of my kitchen floor and the faint sound of my neighbor shouting my name through the door. They said I was lucky. The ambulance arrived just in time. But as I lay in the hospital bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed like mechanical crickets, I didn't feel lucky. I felt old, tired, alone. My son, Michael, visited that first evening. He stood by the window, scrolling on his phone, glancing up occasionally to ask how I felt. I told him not to worry, that it was just stress, that I'd be home soon. He smiled, or at least tried to, and said, "Of course, Mom, don't think about anything. I'll handle everything." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they felt hollow. Days turned into weeks. My recovery was slow, but my spirit began to lift when I imagined going home. To my garden, to my cat, to the smell of my lilacs blooming by the porch. I even asked Michael to water them. He said he would. But every time he came, something in his eyes seemed distant, detached, like he was somewhere else entirely. He brought me bills to sign, routine documents, he said, insurance forms, maintenance authorizations, things like that. My eyesight wasn't great, and honestly, I was too weak to question. He was my son, my only family. One evening, a nurse mentioned she'd seen Michael leaving the hospital parking lot in a brand new car. I laughed it off. He worked hard. Maybe he finally treated himself. Still, something tugged at the back of my mind. When I was finally discharged, after nearly 2 months, I couldn't stop smiling on the way home. Michael said he'd taken care of everything. But when the car stopped in front of the house, I didn't recognize it. The mailbox was gone. The shutters were a different color. And there was a for sale sign, freshly painted, still glinting in the sun. I thought it was a mistake. I told the driver to keep going. But the driveway was filled with strangers' cars. A woman in gardening gloves was trimming my roses. Michael stood on the porch, avoiding my eyes. That was the moment I knew, the moment something inside me broke. I froze at the bottom of the steps, clutching my hospital discharge papers like a shield. Michael finally looked at me, but his expression wasn't guilt. It was irritation, like I was the one making a scene. "Mom," he said, stepping forward, hands raised like he was calming a child. "I can explain." The woman with the gardening gloves glanced up, clearly uncomfortable. She mumbled something about getting the mail and disappeared inside my house. I felt the world tilting again. "Michael," I whispered, my voice cracking, "what is going on? Why are there strangers in my home?" He sighed. "Mom, calm down. You were in the hospital for 2 months. The bills, the upkeep, everything was piling up. You told me to handle things, remember?" "Well, I did." I took a step closer. "What did you do?" He hesitated, then said it as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "I sold the house." The words didn't register at first. They just hung there between us, cold and heavy. I blinked, searching for some sign that he was joking, some crack in his face that would tell me this was all a terrible misunderstanding. What?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Look, Mom, the market's great right now. You were always talking about downsizing. You can stay somewhere simpler. I found you a nice little apartment near the lake. Everything's set up. It's easier this way." "Easier?" I shouted. My voice startled even me. "That was my home, Michael. Your father built that porch with his hands. Every photo, every memory was falling apart." He snapped back. "You don't understand how much stress I've been under. I had to make a decision. You weren't well enough to handle it." Tears blurred my vision. "You had no right." He stepped back, his jaw tightening. "You signed the papers, Mom, every document. You gave me power of attorney when you were admitted. It's done. You can't just undo it now." I remembered the forms, the ones he said were insurance paperwork. My own hand trembled at the memory of my signature. A cold wind passed through us, and suddenly I felt smaller than I ever had before. "I trusted you," I said quietly. He looked away. "It's not about trust. It's about reality. You couldn't keep that house forever." The woman came back outside and smiled nervously. "Mrs. Turner? Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't realize you'd be visiting. We're so grateful for the home. It's beautiful." I turned away before she could finish. My legs were shaking. I got back into the car without another word. Michael tried to follow, but I rolled up the window and told the driver to go. As we pulled away, I stared at the house in the rearview mirror, my lilacs, my roses, my porch, all fading into the distance. And right then, something in me hardened. I had no idea how, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let my son get away with it. The apartment Michael had rented for me was clean, quiet, and utterly soulless. White walls, plastic flowers, a faint smell of disinfectant that reminded me too much of the hospital. I unpacked my small bag in silence. Just clothes, my husband's old wristwatch, and a photograph of the house. That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the radiator sounded like footsteps in my old hallway. Every hum of the fridge reminded me of the steady beat of betrayal. By morning I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit quietly in this sterile box while my son lived, comfortably off the money from my home. I called the bank. The polite voice on the other end confirmed what I already feared. The sale had gone through 6 weeks ago. The property was transferred, the funds distributed. I asked where the money had gone. According to our records, Mrs. Turner, the woman said, clicking through her system. The proceeds were deposited into an account under the name Michael Turner, as per the authorized power of attorney. My throat went dry. Authorized by whom? She paused. By you, ma'am. The documents were signed in your handwriting and notarized. I hung up before she could finish. For the rest of the day, I sat by the window staring at the gray lake. I thought about every form I'd signed in the hospital, every gentle, "Don't worry, Mom," that Michael had whispered as he handed me a pen. I had handed him my future one signature at a time. Still, something about it didn't add up. Michael wasn't clever enough to manage all that paperwork alone. There had to be someone helping him. That's when I remembered my neighbor, Frank, an old friend of my husband's and a retired attorney. He had helped us with the original property deed years ago. I dialed his number, praying he hadn't moved away. "Ruth?" His voice was calm, warm, familiar. "Well, I'll be damned. How are you, old girl?" "Not well," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Frank, I think my son sold my house." Silence, then a low sigh. "Tell me everything." For the next half hour, I poured it all out. The hospital, the signatures, the sale, the car, the way Michael avoided my eyes. Frank didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, "You still have the paperwork he gave you to sign?" I nodded, realizing for the first time that I still had a folder of hospital documents in my purse. "Bring it to me," he said firmly. "Tomorrow morning." "I'll take a look. Don't call Michael. Don't confront him again. Just come." I hung up feeling both terrified and strangely relieved. For the first time since the heart attack, I felt like I wasn't entirely alone. That night, I took the old photograph of my husband from the nightstand and whispered, "I'm going to fix this, George. I promise." Outside, rain started tapping against the window. Steady, determined, like a heartbeat reminding me that I still had a fight left in me. The next morning, I clutched my worn leather purse and made my way to Frank's office. The city was quiet, the early sunlight glinting off wet sidewalks from last night's rain. My heart pounded like it would escape my chest. Frank greeted me with his usual warmth, but there was a seriousness in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "Sit down, Ruth. Let's take a look at what you've brought." I handed over the folder, the hospital documents, the signed forms, every piece of paper Michael had handed me with his insistent words. "Don't worry, Mom, everything's fine." Frank flipped through them, his brows furrowing. I watched silently, my hands twisting in my lap. "These signatures," he began slowly, "are not entirely consistent with your verified handwriting. Some of these forms have subtle differences. The loops on your letters, the spacing, even the pressure. Someone has been very careful, but meticulous mistakes always leave a trace." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You mean Michael forged them?" Frank shook his head. "It's possible. Or he had help. Either way, you have proof that at least one document is suspicious." He leaned back and folded his hands. "This changes everything. We can challenge the sale, but we have to act carefully. You cannot confront him directly yet. Not until we build a strong case." I swallowed hard, the mix of relief and anger knotting in my chest. Relief because I now had someone in my corner. Anger Because my own son had betrayed me with such cold precision. We'll need more than just these forms, Frank continued. Bank records, witnesses, anything that can show intent. You were hospitalized, and someone took advantage of your vulnerability. That's serious. If we do this right, Michael won't just regret this. The court will make sure of it. For the first time since returning home, a flicker of hope warmed me. I had felt powerless for so long, like the world had turned against me. But now there was a path forward. I nodded, determination settling like a stone in my chest. Then let's start tomorrow. I'll do whatever it takes. Frank smiled faintly. That's the spirit. Remember, Ruth, justice isn't always fast, but it's sweeter when it's thorough. I left his office feeling lighter, almost as if the weight of betrayal had lifted slightly from my shoulders. That night, I sat by the small window of my apartment and watched the city lights reflect in the rain-soaked streets. I whispered to myself almost like a prayer. I will get my home back. Not just for me, for my husband, for my memories, for every brick and flower Michael thought he could erase. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves, carrying with it a strange sense of promise, a quiet warning that the fight had only just begun. The next morning, I woke with a strange mix of dread and determination. Frank had given me clear instructions. Gather anything that could prove the sale was illegitimate, and keep meticulous records. I felt like a detective in a story I never wanted to be part of. I started by calling the bank. Each ring felt heavier than the last. When a representative finally picked up, I tried to remain calm, professional. Hello, this is Ruth Turner. I need detailed records for the sale of my property on Elm Street. I need every document, every transfer, everything. There was a pause. That will take some time, Mrs. Turner, the voice replied cautiously. Are you the account holder? Yes, I said, my voice firm, though my hands shook. Or I was. While waiting for the records, I decided to visit the old neighborhood. Even though strangers now lived in my house, I walked slowly along the path leading to the porch, touching the gate I had once painted with my own hands. Memories of laughter, family dinners, and quiet nights on that porch flooded my mind. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, not just the loss of a house, but the erasure of a lifetime. Then, as if by chance, I ran into Mrs. Harlow, a neighbor who had always been friendly with my husband. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Ruth, is everything okay? I heard about the sale. I explained, trying to keep my voice steady, what had happened while I was in the hospital. Mrs. Harlow nodded slowly. I thought something was off, she admitted. Michael was asking questions about the old deeds weeks before you were discharged. He said it was for convenience, but I think he had other plans. Hope and anger tangled inside me. This was the first real confirmation that I hadn't imagined anything. Michael hadn't just taken advantage of circumstance. He had planned it. By mid-afternoon, the bank called back. A representative read out every transfer, every signed form. I scribbled notes, my heart racing. One document in particular stood out, a page notarized by someone I didn't recognize, a signature that almost mirrored mine but wasn't exact. I photographed it and sent it immediately to Frank. His reply came quickly. Ruth, this is our opening. This is what we need. Keep everything safe. Tomorrow we start building the case. And remember, don't confront Michael yet. Not until we're ready. That night, I sat in my apartment with my husband's photograph before me. My fingers traced his face as if drawing strength from him. I will get this back, I whispered. Not just the house, my dignity, my memories. I won't let him erase us. Rain tapped against the window pane again, steady and insistent. It felt like the city itself was urging me on. The following week felt like living in a storm. Every phone call, every email from Frank brought new fragments of the truth. It was like peeling layers off a wound I didn't know still bled. Michael was starting to sense the shift. I noticed subtle changes when he visited, a hesitation in his step, the way he avoided direct eye contact, the restless tapping of his fingers on the table. He was used to control, but now the illusion was slipping. Frank instructed me to keep appearances calm. Patience, he said. Let him think everything is fine. We want him off guard when the time comes. So I smiled. I nodded. I asked about his work, his friends, even complimented the new apartment, all while keeping a careful eye on him, recording every detail mentally. The betrayal had made me sharper, more alert. One afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not from the bank, Not from Michael, but from a real estate office. The document was simple but striking, a detailed account of the house sale, including transactions Michael had overlooked. Frank examined it and said quietly, "This is it. This will be the crack that opens the door." I didn't understand fully yet, but I could feel the momentum. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't chasing shadows. I was gaining ground. That evening, Michael tried to act casual over dinner. "So, everything's settled with the apartment?" he asked. I nodded, letting my smile hide the storm inside. "Yes, it's perfect. Thank you for handling it." He didn't notice the fire in my eyes, or the determination etched into every line of my face. He thought I was weak, grateful, compliant. Later that night, I reviewed the documents Frank had prepared. One small, overlooked signature, one subtle irregularity. It was enough to put the entire sale into question. And for the first time, I imagined a future where justice wasn't just an idea, but a tangible, unavoidable reality. The rain tapped against my window again, persistent and insistent. It had been a quiet companion through this ordeal, a reminder that I could endure, that I could fight, that I could reclaim what was mine. I leaned back in my chair, hands on the photograph of my husband, and whispered, "We're not done yet." Not by a long shot. The call from Frank came early in the morning, shattering the quiet stillness of my apartment. "Ruth," he said, his voice low but charged with excitement. "The bank has reviewed the documents. They've acknowledged irregularities. Your signatures don't match entirely on several forms. Michael's claim isn't as ironclad as we thought." I sat down stunned, my hands trembling. After months of fear, uncertainty, and betrayal, the first flicker of justice had appeared. Frank continued, "We can start proceedings immediately. I want you prepared. He may try to intimidate or manipulate you, but you stand firm. Everything we've collected is solid." That afternoon, I received a visitor I never expected, Michael. He tried to mask his unease with forced calm, but the tension in his jaw and the subtle shaking of his hands betrayed him. "Mom," he began, voice measured, I know things are complicated, but maybe we can—" I held up a hand. "Don't, Michael. You had months to care for me. Instead, you sold my home. You ignored my needs, my memories, my trust." His eyes darted away, and for the first time, I saw fear, a small human crack in the armor he had built around his arrogance. "Mom," he stammered, "I didn't mean—" "Didn't mean?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You took everything from me while I was vulnerable. Do you even understand the gravity of what you did?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. No excuses remained. He had been caught, not by force, but by the meticulous evidence Frank and I had assembled. In the following days, the bank froze the transaction temporarily. The real estate agents were forced to halt any further dealings. Michael grew restless, calling Frank multiple times, his voice rising with panic. Every call I received from Frank left me more hopeful. Each confirmation, each acknowledgement of wrongdoing, felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself, my dignity, my memories, my home. For the first time in weeks, I slept with a sense of peace. It was fragile, like the first light of dawn breaking through storm clouds. But it was real. The lilacs outside my window swayed gently in the morning breeze, a reminder that life could continue even after betrayal. And as I gazed at them, I whispered, "We're almost there. Justice is coming, Michael. You will answer for this." The courtroom was silent, except for the shuffle of papers and the occasional whisper from the gallery. I sat in the front row, clutching my husband's photograph tightly, my knuckles white, heart hammering with anticipation. Michael entered, trying to mask his nerves with arrogance. But I saw it in the way he avoided my eyes, the slight tremble in his hands as he adjusted his tie. The air was thick with tension, years of betrayal distilled into a single moment. Frank sat beside me, calm and collected, a small, reassuring smile on his face. "It's all here, Ruth, every detail, every irregularity. The truth will come out." The judge reviewed the evidence meticulously, documents, signatures, witnesses, and expert testimonies, each piece stacked like bricks, constructing a wall of undeniable truth. Finally, the gavel hit. "The sale of the property is hereby declared null and void. The rightful ownership remains with the plaintiff, Mrs. Ruth Turner. The defendant is held accountable for damages incurred during this period." A wave of relief and triumph surged through me. Tears blurred my vision as the weight of months of fear, anger, and helplessness began to lift. Michael's jaw tightened, his face pale. For once, he was the one facing consequences. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath of cold, crisp air. The city felt alive, vibrant, and somehow renewed. Frank patted my shoulder gently. "You did it, Ruth. Justice was patient, but it was worth the wait." I returned home to the garden I had once feared was gone forever. My lilacs had survived, their fragrant blooms a quiet reminder that life and love endure. Even when threatened by betrayal, I walked the paths, touched the gate, and remembered my husband's hands guiding me, steady and strong. Sitting on the porch, I smiled to myself. The battle had been long, painful, and emotionally exhausting, but I had reclaimed more than just a house. I had reclaimed my dignity, my voice, and my sense of agency. And in that moment, I understood the true power of perseverance. Betrayal can wound, but courage, patience, and justice can heal, leaving scars that remind us of our strength, not our weakness. As the sun set behind the lilacs, casting a golden glow over my restored home, I whispered softly, almost to the wind, "I am home, and nothing can ever take this from me again."